Sometimes picking the best champions in the game can be hard, right? They get picked by the enemy team, banned by your own team, and you're left wondering whether you should dodge or play it out. Well, don't worry, because the Jizz is here to guide you on 10 underrated low-key broken champions you can play in 1120. You won't have to worry about them getting picked or banned nearly as much, and they are just as OP as anyone else. Now remember to like, share, subscribe, smile, and let's go. Now we're going to start with the 4 bot lane champions we've come up with in this countdown. And the first champion we have to recommend as being low-key broken and underrated, this is Kog'Maw. And Kog'Maw hasn't been picked nearly as much, all because of that Wits End nerf a few patches ago, but he's still performing very well. In fact, in Master and above, he has one of the best win rates in the entire game at 56%, so this champion works, no doubt about it. And that's not from 5 games, by the way, that's from over 200. And one of the reasons he is having so much success is because players are now running Lethal Tempo and not Hail of Blades. And the reason for this is because you don't really need Hail of Blades in the laning phase as Kog'Maw. Lethal Tempo will still give you enough attack speed to make use of your Bio Arcane Barrage, and it also procs off your ability damage as well. Hail of Blades is just auto attacks only, and seeing as your abilities on Kog'Maw, your Q, your E, your ultimate are skill shots, getting some attack speed ready in case a fight happens is great off your abilities. Presence of Mind is also being picked over Triumph, simply because as Kog'Maw you can run if you're spamming your spells. Now the rest of the rune page is very standard, and as for your items, you want to be rushing Immortal Shield Bow first with your Berserker's Grizz, and then building Wits End second because of that change and not first. But if you're not against a lot of magic damage, there isn't really much point building Wits End. You might as well build a Ginsu's Rageblade into a Runaan's Hurricane and go all out on your attack speed and attack. But just remember, as Kog'Maw you have no real escape, so your positioning will be key, as will your second summoner spell choice. You can choose Heal, Exhaust, Cleanse, just make sure to pick the summoner spell which is going to give you the most value against the enemy bot lane and the enemy team itself. Now the next AD carry on this list we have to talk about as being underrated, this is Jhin, and not Dark Harvest Jhin, which is what most players are going. I'm talking Fleet Footwork Jhin. Because of the Fleet Footwork change a couple of patches ago, where it's benefiting ranged champions more, because when you hit an enemy champion, you're going to heal more off of this. For Jhin, this is obviously brilliant, especially in the laning phase, because you are a strong lane bully, this just makes you more menacing. Now as for the rest of the rune page, a bit like Kog'Maw, we're taking Presence of Mind, but we don't need Alacrity, so we're taking Bloodline for that sustain, Coup de Grace, and as for your secondary tree, this is also interesting, taking Time Warp Tonic and then Biscuit Delivery. These, instead of going Taste of Blood or Ravenous Hunter or maybe even Gathering Storm and Nimbus Cloak, the Biscuits and Time Warp not only give you the most sustain, but Time Warp Tonic's movement speed works really well with Jhin as well. And then for your minor runes, make sure to take 2 Adaptive Force, do not take attack speed. Now as for your items, very standard stuff. Gale Force into the Collector, into Rapid Fire Cannon, and as for your boots, Boosts of Swiftness are definitely the best. This setup for Jhin in Korean High Elo sees him have a 53-54% win rate, which is very respectable indeed, so definitely worth playing Jhin if he is open. And the last AD carry who is super underrated, this is Tristana. Now she was nerfed for the mid lane because her base AD went down, but in the bot lane she is one of the most devastating snowballing AD carries simply because the damage output you still have. But the key to really playing Tristana well is to use all of your abilities together. We don't want to be using our explosive charge just on its own. Try to use your Q, W, E and ultimate all in one. You are an all-in AD carry, and playing to this identity is going to give you more success. Now as for your runes, it's very standard stuff with Hail of Blades of course, and then Presence of Mind and Alacrity in the precision tree. Now for your items, what the best Korean Tristanas are building is Kraken Slayer first as your mythic, which gives you a huge amount of damage, and then Phantom Dancer, which gives you even more stickiness when you jump on your opponent, and then Infinity Edge to capitalize on that 60% critical strike chance and to also amplify your damage by a lot as well. Just like Jhin, this setup for Tristana in Korean High Elo has seen her have a 53% win rate, and she's rarely picked at the moment, so surprise the enemy bot lane with this pick, and you can thank the Jizz later. Now the last underrated bot laner on this countdown, this is actually a support, and it might take a few of you by surprise, but this is Zilean, with a 56% win rate across all regions in Master and above. 56%, that is no joke. And let me just say that in Korean High Elo, he has a 60% win rate. And one of the reasons for this is the skill order these Zilean players are going. They're putting 3 points in their Q at level 5, and then they are maxing out that E by level 10. The movement speed you give yourself or your ally is insane, and remember, Shurelya's Battle Song's passive is proccing off this ability, which is unreal for your teammates. Now in terms of your runes, you can see these on screen now, and as far as your items go, it's quite simple. You're taking Shurelya's Battle Song with Warmog's Armor and then Anathema's Chains. These give you a very tanky setup, but the cooldown you need to be really effective, and make sure you run Lucidity Boots as well. And as for your summoner spells, it's always going to be Flash, and you can either take Exhaust or Ignite depending on what you need to beat the enemy team. Now speaking of supports, I've got one support who is so good in the mid lane, and we've seen him picked in previous World Championship matches, but at the moment he's really flying under the radar, and this is Pyke mid. And this pick in High Elo has a 60% win rate, which is ridiculous. Now as for your runes, very standard with Hail of Blades, and then you're taking Triumph, and then and Tenacity, and as far as your items go, we're looking to get an early Serrated Dirk, building this into a Duskblade or Draktar, then Youmuu's Ghostblade, and then, depends on what the enemy team composition is. You can take Edge of Night if they have a lot of skill shoulders, you can take Serpent's Fang if they have a lot of shields, more of Malmortius against burst damage, Death's Dance. It really just depends on what the enemy team comp has. But as for your boots, I know lots of Pyke players are going to go mobility boots. Go cooldown boots. Cooldown is so important on Pyke, and you will still have the movement speed with your W's to get around the map and make plays. Now for your summoner spells, of course, make sure to take Flash and Ignite, and just remember that your laning phase isn't really the best. What you're waiting for is the gank from your jungle or just the map to open up, so let the enemy champion push into you, stay healthy, and wait for your time to shine. Now we're going to stay in the mid lane, guys, for these next two underrated picks, and the first of these is Tryndamere. Now he's been making a lot more noise recently, but to be honest, he is still underrated in lower elos in the mid lane. And one of the reasons he is so good in the mid lane is simply because you cannot push him out of it. We saw Chovy pick this at Worlds a couple of nights ago, and it starts with taking 3 rejuvenation beads as your starting item and a health potion, and then maxing your bloodlust, your Q. This gives you the ultimate sustainer. You are the immovable object in the mid lane. This is great into pretty much any matchup because you have unlimited sustain. Now as for your runes, Lethal Tempo again is going to be the best keystone, and then we're taking Resolve as the secondary tree with Second Wind, which again is going to give you unlimited sustain with unflinching. And as for your items, our goal is to rush Iron Spike Whip first, build this into a Gore Drinker, and then Essence Reaver, Navori Quick Blades, Mortal Reminder, Infinity Edge. Again, it really depends what you need to beat the enemy team composition. And as for your boots, I know lots of players are building Berserker's Greaves. Go cooldown boots, give these a try. Attack speed on Tryndamere, yes, it's great, but you don't really need it that much because you're more about durability than you are about DPS. So having more cooldowns more often is just more beneficial. So if Tryndamere is open, especially if the enemy mid laner is a mana-based mid laner, he is definitely one of the best picks. Now the last mid laner, and you can also play this champion in the top lane, this is Vladimir. And thanks to that passive buff back in 11-16, Vladimir has definitely seen more success. In the mid and top lane, he has around a 54-55% in higher elo, so he definitely works. But why does he work? What are these Vladimirs doing differently? Well, as for your runes, you have 2 pages. You can take Phase Rush, or if you're against a squishy champion and team composition, taking Electrocute is going to give you more kill potential. Just make sure that in both cases you're taking cooldown in your minor runes. Now for your starting items, make sure you take Dark Seal with a refillable potion first, and for your first base, it really depends on what runes you run and the gold value you have. So if you can buy Sorcerer Shoes straight up with 1100 gold, do so. But if you actually have magical footwear in your runes with the Phase Rush build, your goal is to get an alternator and build this into Rocket Belt, and then depending on how fed you are, you can either go with Rabadon's Death Cap to kill the game off quicker, Cosmic Drive, which is going to give you more utility, both will work, or you could even get a Zhonya's Hourglass. Again, it just really depends on what the team composition is, but Hextech Rocket Belt as your first item is essential. And then for your summoner spells, make sure to take Flash and Ignite. This just gives you the biggest kill threat in the mid lane, but just be careful when you're playing Vladimir about your pool usage. Using this too often is going to leave you susceptible to ganks and even the enemy mid laner. This is one of the reasons why you're so annoying to play against, especially for assassins, because when they jump onto you, you go into your pool and they can't really do anything. Just make sure to play around your Bloodthirst and you will really see just how good Vladimir is. Now let's head to the top lane, guys, and talk about the 2 champions we have to consider for the most underrated in 11-20. Now one of these is certainly picked and he's sometimes bad, and this is Jax. And for Jax in higher elo, he actually has one of the top 5 win rates, sitting around 53%, and he's really finally getting the recognition he deserves. He's been picked at this year's Worlds already, and it starts with your runes. So obviously we want to be taking Conqueror, and the rest of the page is very standard indeed. And then if we go over to your items, what you want to be doing is starting with a Corrupting Potion. I know some players, especially in lower elos, might start D-Blade or D-Shield, but Corrupting Potion is so much better. It's also going to work with your Time or Tonic in your runes, and it gives you enough trading potential. This is what Jax is about. It's all about your Counter-Strike and playing around this cooldown and outdueling your opponent. Now as for your major items, we want to be trying to reach our Sheen first, which is 700 gold, building this into a Divine Sunderer, and then again, it really depends what you need. You can go Blade of the Rune King if you're against a tanky top laner, Wit's End, Black Cleaver, then building a Steris Gauge, Guardian's Angel, and as for your boots, you really want to be going either Plated Steel Caps if you're against an attack damage champion, or Mercury Treads if you're against an AP based champion. And as for your summoner spells, take Flash and Teleport. Now the other top lane I want to draw your attention to, this is a champion who has been nerfed recently, and this is Kennen. And I actually think it's a great time to pick Kennen just because he's been nerfed. Less people are going to pick and ban him, but he's still an extremely effective champion. Now one of the reasons he's so good in the top lane is because he's a ranged champion, so if you want to bully your opponents in lane and then take over in a teamfight, Kennen is for sure one of the premier picks. Now the runes you should take are on screen now. It's a very standard setup, and as for your items, a bit like Vladimir, Hextech Rocket Belt, Sorcerer Shoes, but Zhonya's Hourglass after your Rocket Belt is a must. This is really important when you dive into the enemy team composition, because when you do come out of your ultimate, you are going to die. So Zhonya's Hourglass gives you the time you need to survive these situations. After that, it really depends. Void Staff for magic penetration Restoration, Morellonomicon if the team has a lot of healing, Rabadon's Death Cap. Just choose whatever is going to give you the best chance of winning. Now in terms of your skills, make sure you max your Q first, followed by your W and then your E. And for your summoner spells, of course we want Flash and Teleport because we're all about making plays in those team fights. Just make sure that if you are going to pick Kennen, you ban Aurelia. Now the final champion, guys, we have to think about for the most underrated of 1120 is a champion who's getting buffed. Let's go. And this is Udyr in the jungle. And I know Udyr has been nerfed a lot, even his items like Turbo Chemtech. Like, is it really worth picking him? Yes, it is. This champion in high elo at the moment has a 53% win rate as a jungler, and in 1120 this patch is going to improve because your Phoenix Dance's cone damage is increasing, and this of course is the ability you max first. This is going to improve your clear, your dueling, but I just want to point out before you guys pick Udyr and potentially run it down, to give you the rune page you need to run. This involves taking Phase Rush and not Conqueror. This is because the movement speed it gives you is way more valuable, and as your items you really have two choices here. You can take Stridebreaker, which is amazing for the mythic passive, the movement speed, or you can take Gore Drinker, which is probably going to be more consistent just because it's more forgiving. If you go into a fight and run it down, or if you do get caught out, Gore Drinker's active is certainly going to save you. So Stridebreaker is certainly more offensive, and I would build this if you're super fed, but if you're not Gore Drinker, but follow both of these mythics with Asterisk Gauge, and then again, it depends on the team comp you're against. Frozen Heart, Thormail, Dead Man's Plate, Wit's End, Randuin's Omen, it's completely up to you guys. Now as far as your boots go, I know lots of Udyr players will be going Lucidity boots, but take Bladed Steel Cats or Mercury Treads depending on the enemy team composition. So those are the 10 most low-key broken champions, guys, of 1120. Let me know in the comments what you think of these picks, and if you have had success with them so far this patch. And as always, make sure to like, subscribe, all that stuff, and also make sure to check out the Game Week website before you leave for the best champion courses, guides, high elo FOD analyses. If you want to make that end of season push for LP and for a climb, we have our GameWeek.com links in the description and comment section. And until tomorrow's video, this has been the Cheers.